Games. Board games, we might be talking about trick-taking games, but we're not gonna shout. This is a thing that Jess has thought about, and we'll discuss it, but we will not shout. And of that, there can be absolutely no doubt. And I'm not going to talk about having a grout, but we'll talk about trick-taking games, and we'll come up with some examples, and we will share their names. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are, 10 a.m. is UK time. Time for Busy Beats and Board Game Bladder. And today, Jess and I are both busy. Jess, you're in the middle of shipping everything, of getting Library Labyrinth off to everyone.
All
This
the
is the
fulfillment.
final stage, isn't it? Because, I
All
mean,
the
sure.
fulfillment.
I mean, do you consider this the final stage, or is the final stage? I mean, is the final stage people getting it, or is the final stage really you having people play it?
I think so. For me, the final stage is probably going to Games Expo because that's sort of because for me that bookends it nicely, and I'll be there saying, "Hey, who's played it? Who wants to get a copy?" There'll also be quite a few people who are picking up their copies there at Games Expo. But yeah, I think the final stage is probably, the final stage in a Kickstarter cycle. That would be when people get it and they tell me that they've got it and they've played it, and and sometimes they put pictures on social media, and that feels like it's done then. When you're looking at those pictures and people are saying, "Hey, we're playing it tonight." I got a tweet from a friend this morning saying, "Yeah, we're playing it again tonight." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is good. I like this."
That is like a wonderful approach. I mean, annoyingly, you're crackling again, so maybe go out after my next song. So I think it's really interesting to think about what's the final stages, because I am finishing up Categorical, which is way overdue. I launched that Kickstarter at a terrible time. It funded in March 2020. When I launched the Kickstarter in February 2020, I had never heard of COVID, which now, if you've not heard of COVID, what the heck kind of person are you? But of course, it became a big part of our lives, and then we had to be isolated. I got depressed, and then there was a thing called Brexit that was happening, and then I asked the manufacturer, "Hey, what's going to happen at this point?" They said, "Don't worry, your leaders won't be that stupid. It's not going to happen." That is literally what I was told. But the Polish manufacturer did not believe that it would possibly happen, because it's such a terrible idea. I'm sorry to get political, but I think that
Get political away. It is, it is.
I mean, given your
That's what
background, I don't
happens.
think you've got any qualms with that. But yes, so that was really messed me up. But so it's not going to be, sadly, in a nice box like I would like, because I just don't have the number of backers to make that financially viable. I mean, I'm printing about 300 copies. I could print 1,000 copies and go into debt. And honestly, that was kind of what I was planning to do, but it would have been a little bit of debt, and then I would have definitely made my money back. But at this point, it would involve more debt and more work and stuff. But it's like, okay, I'm going to get something ready. I'm going to go through Rob Butler, get a sort of tuck box, and I've done the letter shapes, which I think you've seen a lot of them. And throughout the process, it was like, okay, I just need to get something. I need to stop worrying about it. And then I made up a bunch of things, and I wasn't too happy. But then someone gave, and then based on people's feedback, I made some small tweaks, and I was like, yeah, this is actually looking good. And then I added, this is definitely not the final coloring, but then I had like stuff like this, which was the color experimentation, and then I did all the letters together, and it was even wilder and more graffiti based, and I'm excited. So what is the final thing? Is it like, once I get it into my hands, that will be a major milestone, I'm not going to lie. And I think that even if it's not finished, it will be something worth celebrating. But once it's with people, that is my responsibility complete, as far as I'm concerned. Once you've got it, I've done my part. I mean, I hope you play it. I hope you enjoy it. But I've done my bit. I've got to need a game. But there is such a thing as aftercare, which I think it's worth talking about, maybe later on. But first, I would like to, and while you refresh, I'd like to talk about recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights, recent highlights, playing games and other delights. So the question to everyone out there, and also Jess Metheringham when Jess comes back to fix the sound, is what are some of your recent highlights? So what have you been up to, Jess?
Oh, what have I been up to? There's
So
been
much
quite a
better.
lot of garden things going on. So we've got a whole load of gravel for just outside our house. But we got this gravel from my mum, and it came from her garden because she doesn't need any more. So there's a bit more dirt on it than you would normally expect. So I have been washing gravel in buckets. That is incredibly glamorous,
I mean,
and I'm
if
sure
you're
you'll all
just putting
agree.
gravel onto the garden, does it need to be washed?
Yeah, because the thing is that there's too much mud in it, which basically means that seeds and plants will stick there and grow, and then we'll get gravel with lots of weeds in it. So in order to reduce the the number of dandelions, essentially, we get coming up through a gravel path. That's why we're washing it.
Hmm. And I
See,
mean,
there
why
is
are you
reasoning.
against dandelions? What's his?
Dandelions are fine, just not in the middle of a gravel path. So the thing about this is that it's supposed to be draining the water away from the side of the house, so the water doesn't sort of doesn't go down through the ventilation bricks and and sort of clog up the foundations.
So the water has
Yeah.
to have space. So basically, we need to get rid of the dirt so the water can filter through the gravel.
Yeah, you need to get rid of things like plant roots and things. A little bit of dirt won't make that much difference. But if there's too much dirt, then you get plants growing in it. It stops being gravel and it turns it back into a much more organic mixture, which
So
is
this isn't
less
you
good for
saying
the.
that you prefer gravel on an aesthetic point of view or to walk over. This is you saying that this gravel has a purpose for draining.
Specifically for around the house. Yes, we have a Victorian house, and we have a Victorian house manual. It turns out that the Hayes manuals come in all sorts of varieties, and so we have a DIY, how to treat your house right, etc. manual. And this is the advice it gives. So I'm like, okay, well, let's make sure there's not too much dirt in this gravel.
Let me ask, I mean, clearly life goes on. You're not just working on Library Labyrinth. You're not just working in politics, although like your political work continues, and that is what I understand brings in a bit more money than the board games.
That's a bit of the freelance stuff. I mean, this year I think the board games may bring in slightly more because of Library Labyrinth.
Amazing. But my question is, how do you balance your time? Because this is something that I kind of struggle with. Like, at what point, how do you manage? Because, like, I did a show about whether you work in bursts or just a little bits every day. But how do you manage your time? Because clearly, making gravel, I'm not going to say that's the most relaxing thing, but presumably it's quite nice to have something that you're doing for yourself, for your own house. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, the glib answer to how do you manage your time would be with great difficulty. Because it is always really tricky to do that. I mean, personally, I try to make sure I do a little bit of whatever I'm doing at the moment. So right now, fulfilling Library Labyrinth, so I am sending out all the UK orders myself, which means that I'm physically going down to the post office. Now, rather than spend a few days where I did loads and loads and loads of orders, then I have said, okay, let's do about 20 a day maximum. That's because Library Labyrinth, it's relatively heavy. Oh yes, last time we were trying to work out how many I could carry. Turns out that 14 is actually the limit and 12 is much more sensible. So I go down to the post office with those and I make sure that
What
I
did
do a
I
bit
say?
every day.
Out of curiosity, was my guess 18?
You thought I might be able to do a bit more. Don't think you actually had a number, but I think you thought I might be able to do a bit more. And I was like, oh, will I be able to? But no.
So 14 is the absolute limit that you can do without probably having them fall over.
Yeah, without having to stop several times and and massage your hands in that way you do when you've got something that's too heavy. But I have been getting some collected from my house as well. So I've sort of been balancing the how the number I take down to the post office with that with the number collected from my house. But managing my time, then I've been trying to make sure I get a certain number of those done each day rather than going full pelt, let's do everything super quickly. Because then it would just be days where I'd be
Can I ask
walking
why
back and
20?
forth from the
Because if
post
you
office.
said that 12 is a reasonable number, why not 24? Because wouldn't that be 2 trips?
Well, if I did it twice, there have been days where I've done 24 and I've done it twice, but I get the others collected from outside my house.
Okay.
And
So that's a free service that they provide, Royal Mail.
That's a free service that they provide, but I don't. But because I'm in a residential area and I know my postie and I don't particularly want to overburden him, with 20 or 30 each day. But why 20? Because when you buy postage through the Royal Mail website, which I've looked into it, then it is easiest to do it in batches of 10.
Is it?
Or that's how I found it.
Okay, I thought that the numbers didn't make a difference. I mean, what I found was that when I'm printing them off, it's 4 things to a sheet of A4. And
Yep,
although that
absolutely.
would also be 5 sheets of A4, so that makes a difference.
Which
Multiples of
also
4
works
do work.
very well. Yep. No, I've worked it. No, it seems to work quite well there. Yeah, you just get the guillotine out. Zoop, zoop.
I might need to buy. No, actually, you know what? I'm downsizing. I need to get rid of stuff. I'm not buying a guillotine, but maybe when I go to Thailand, maybe once I'm established, I might, one day. This is probably not this year. Maybe not next year. Maybe next year. Who knows? I might set up a little studio with like a proper, camera thing, and then I might do some videos. Streams of like me actually playing games with proper lighting and people coming round, and maybe have a little guillotine and try and organize more playtesting in Bangkok.
Make little prototypes. It'll all be
and
cool,
if you are
yeah.
based in Bangkok, then or near Bangkok, come over and visit me. And I was going to say I'll offer you a place to stay, but it's quite cheap anyway. But if you are based locally and you want to stay with me, I'll presumably have at least a sofa, I'm hoping, or a bit of floor space. I don't know what I'll have. I've no idea. But yes, recent highlights. My own recent highlights. Yesterday, I did not much work on my most prevalent projects, and a quick hello to Mike. It is lovely to see you, who says boop. And I did send you a voice message. I hope that you've listened to it, and I would absolutely love to have you on board for UK Games Expo, but let's talk at some point once I've finished my most pressing projects. So currently, I've gotten the art off for Categorical, but I'm planning to do 2 new Bezzy bargain bags for UK Games Expo. One of them I'm very proud of. It's called A Game About Auctioning Cubes After Winning an Auction to Become the Auctioneer. So there's not many games out there with English auctions. I think we worked out that there's probably about 3 games in the world with proper English auctions. So not only is this an English auction, which is a rarity, but also when you're to motivate you to become the English auctioneer and to be doing a good job of being the auctioneer, you get all the money that the winning bid is. So if someone bids like 12, then you would get all that 12 money. But first, you've got to do a tiny sealed bid auction to the bank to become the auctioneer. Because how much is it worth to become the auctioneer? Well, it's worth as much as the next people are willing to pay. So it's all about analyzing what people are willing to do. It's all about predicting that. And it is the type of game where you can totally lose the game on the first turn. So I will warn you about that. You could theoretically bid all of your money to become the auctioneer, and it probably won't be worth quite that much. And then you could bid all of your money again and, yeah, just lose the game. And
so hang on, Bez. How are you defining these auctions? So you talk about an English auction. How are you defining that? Are you saying that that's
by,
just with
the definition
coming in
given in Board
more
Game
than
Geek,
once?
and also
Oh.
by Jeff Engelstein and Isaac Shalev's book. Very precise. I mean, Alan Paul and I spent a whole hour and a bit talking about each of these mechanisms. If you want to go about sealed bid,
I
so
will go and look at that. So it's not a sealed
everyone
bid
shows
auction.
a number and then reveals it, and boom, highest winning bid does it. And the problem with sealed bid is you've got to have a tiebreaker. Unless you've got something like for sale where every single card is unique, then no tiebreaker is needed because the cards inherently will never tie. But in my game, everyone starts with the same currency, so the tiebreaker is from the left of the person who was the last auctioneer. And the person who read the rules most recently or learned or knows the game the best starts with that marker. So they are probably not going to be the auctioneer. So they'll lose in the event of a tie. And then it just carries on round. And then English auction is one person saying, hey, do I hear that amount? Do I hear that amount? And it's up to someone running it. It's almost subjective. Like if two people say something at the same time, it's up to the auctioneer to determine who was actually first. And that is an English auction. And if people who've played it have really enjoyed it, it is going to be a game where you have to supply your own cubes. I will warn you about that. So I'm going to sell it maybe at a $5. I'm not sure how many I'm going to print, maybe 100. And, then I'll have about 70-ish to actually sell. And so hopefully they'll sell out during UK Games Expo. And if they don't, then I guess that's a lesson that people really don't want to supply their own cubes, which will be kind of a shame. But I mean, Doric said, I love this game, but no, I'm not going to supply my own cubes. I just can't be bothered with that. But I'd pay you 20 quid if you gave me some cubes. So, I mean, yeah, that...
So maybe you need to have your own card version and then pitch it to other publishers, to see if they want to make it into a deluxe version.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the answer. And if it was a deluxe version, I think rather than cubes, it might be little tokens, because then you can have little bits of art, which is kind of nice. Although cubes do also, it needs to be chunky enough to have this tactile quality of, what's in front of everyone, and we can sort of see what's going on. So that is definitely part of the game. But like all my things, the reason I say I'm going to sell 70 of them and not 100 is because, well, firstly, there's about 15 people on the stand, and so I want to give everyone who's helping me teach the game a copy of the game. And secondly, I want to keep maybe, 3 copies, 5 copies back for myself, like one for future, one, like a couple to give to very close friends. And then I also want to keep a few to show to publishers, exactly like you said, because I'm hoping that... and yes, you could absolutely use, but you have to have 3 different types of things. That's important. You have to have about, and I'll work out this maths within the next couple of days, but like what's the absolute theoretical maximum that you need of these things? But I think you need about 14 each of 3 different colors. So you could theoretically also just have pennies, and then you spray paint 12 of them one color, and then you spray paint 12 of them another color, and that would totally work.
You know what I'm thinking for this?
That's how you should spray paint some stuff and make a little gift thing that costs me like 30. I mean, maybe I should do that.
This is an optimal game for, say, 2 packs of Starbursts. Sweets. Because with most of those, you get, you normally get sort of 3 or 4 varieties, occasionally 5 in these things. You need it to be wrapped. Starbursts are probably a good candidate for that then. Starbursts, I think, come in 4 different varieties. So that means you get to eat one of them immediately.
Oh, yes, it is. Red, orange, yellow, and pink, apparently.
So, I mean, I'm just thinking of thinking of the sweets we get in our local shop as well. So you get sort of the, the more generic stuff, well, you do in the Lidl anyway. So you go to Lidl and you buy some of their sort of, gummy type sweets, which are wrapped up, and I think there you get at least 3 different types of things, and you get a big bag for £1.50. So
According to the internet, the pink is the overwhelming favorite.
okay.
So maybe you keep the pink ones to the side, and then you allocate the pink ones based on who won the game.
There you go. Perfect.
Ah.
Games with sweets are good for this sort of thing. Jelly
I mean,
beans
in
won't
all
work that well because
seriousness,
there's too many varieties.
in all seriousness, seriously though, I mean, I could buy a couple of tins of spray paint, let's say a red one and a black one, and I could go to the bank and ask them for a whole bunch of pennies, and then I could spray paint them. Do you think that's something that people would want? Like kind of a little, like this is like you've basically got 30 less than 50 pence worth of pennies, but they've been spray painted, and then I charge you, I don't know, £2.50 for that for my hassle.
I think that I'd prefer a little bag of cubes, a little bag of wooden cubes. I can see that some people do, but then there are also a lot of people who do like they like the metal coins you get sometimes in games, and I actually don't particularly like those. I prefer things to all be one type of thing. I prefer
But they would be
tokens.
also one type of thing. They'd all be pennies.
Yeah, I know, but well, I don't know, maybe. But personally, I'd prefer wooden cubes, and I'm not
I
entirely
mean, if
certain
I'm
why.
offering wooden cubes, then it goes back to the thing of, well, you've probably got wooden cubes in your other games if you're at UK Games Expo. Come on, surely you've got a game that you can just borrow like 40 cubes from.
Let's imagine, you'd probably get, I don't know, a half of the people buying it saying, yes, I'll take the pennies. That's just my estimate.
Maybe I should do a Twitter poll. What do you think, people watching? Do you think I should do a bag of pennies? Would you want a bag of pennies which have been spray painted? Well, to be 3 different colors. Some would be original, some would be red, and some would be another color, maybe black. I mean, black, original, and red seems like 3 different contrasting colors. That seems like a good thing.
Yeah, possibly. Okay. Let's
But let me know if that's
it.
something that you would really like, and if but anyway, yes, the 2 projects that I have as my priority are that one, and also a game about words that rhyme with terrible rules online. This is a name in progress. I just kind of use the word online because then it rhymes. And I'm not sure if the terrible rules should necessarily be online, but like the rules are going to be deliberately ambiguous, and the rules are it's a lot of people who are really into strategic games would say, no, this isn't a game. This is more of just a creativity tool that helps you make poems. And I'm not enjoying this. And that I would not dispute that.
Some people like that, though. Some people really like that kind of performative game. So as long as it's clear what it is, you can say.
I mean,
right,
I'm telling you, it's got terrible. Maybe rather than terrible, maybe I should say ambiguous. Maybe terrible rules is like, I mean, I say they're terrible, but like they're more ambiguous. They're more kind of deliberately open to interpretation, because the point is that you're kind of being creative, not just in the poems that you make up, because one side of each card has words that rhyme. One side of each card has like an inspiration prompt. So it would be something relating to, and then it'll give you a picture. And I've asked a lot of people, both on my Discord and also on a Facebook group and on Twitter, and also my private Facebook Messenger with people who've confirmed that they're going to UK Games Expo. Hey, answer some questions of things you like, things that excite you, something you want to see represented in games, and something that you're scared of. And I'm going to try and use as many of those as I can to put into things. And yeah, the rules are going to be, hey, here's an idea for what you could do. Here's an idea for a game that you could play with this. But make it clear that these are, whilst I would consider it to be a game within the scope of Board Game Geek, and I'm going to put it up there. It's deliberately ambiguous in as much as working out with your fellow players what exactly you're playing is as much the game as coming up with the rhymes and choosing what words to use within your poetry.
I would say that you should keep the word terrible in there, because the type of people who are going to be attracted to it are the type of people who value the sound of the word terrible. Terrible is a better sounding word than if you're saying it's just ambiguous. I mean, for a start, that's got more syllables, so it doesn't fit as well. And secondly,
yes, one more.
Secondly, so people, so those people who like the sound of the title will be less inclined to go with it for that. And secondly, to me, the word terrible, particularly with this sort of context, terrible rules online, it makes me think of something like Roald Dahl. It makes me think of that kind of silly story. There's a nostalgia attached to it. Terrible, in fact, is not a word that. Terrible
because you've got
has a
like with the Gruffalo, it's like the terrible claws, isn't it? Like something that fills you with terror.
Terrible teeth and terrible claws. Terrible sounds like a kid's word almost. So I think terrible is a very good word.
And it is going to be totally family friendly. Although you could also, I mean, like with all creative games, if you play it with adults, I mean, you could talk about very adult things, but that's entirely up to you.
Yeah. No, I think keep the word terrible in it.
Okay. Do you think that's a good title? A game about words that rhyme with terrible rules online.
I think it's a good title. I think that if you're going to do it, I mean, firstly, I think you should have terrible rules online, but I also think you should have a copy of the rules, and you should probably have a card with a line on it as well, so you can put the copy of the rules in the deck.
Yeah, there will be also some terrible rules in the cards, but there will also definitely be terrible rules online just to. So yeah, I mean, for user experience, I think there needs to be also some terrible rules in the game for sure.
Yeah,
but the rules in the game will also be terrible.
A line on it.
Pardon?
If you've got a blank card with a line on it, then you can put the card with the rules on top of the card with the line, and it becomes terrible rules online. And people will groan and go, that is the most, that is the stupidest joke ever. But
and there's just a little line at the bottom of the card.
Yeah. And it's that, yes. Anyway.
I love that. That is brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm taking that.
Jokes so bad. They are good.
I love that.
Excellent.
The other thing I did yesterday is I spent a lot of time with my friend Jess, who was over here visiting London, and we wandered around. We Jess treated me to a sort of doner kebab type thing, and then honestly afterwards I think I need to stop eating so much. I think my problem is that I eat really big portions. Like I only eat 1 or 2 times a day, which I don't think is great for me. I need to start eating like I think at least 3 times a day, and being able to keep stuff back, if you know what I mean. Because I could tell after I'd eaten half of it that this is probably enough, but while my friend goes and gets the train out.
I know that feeling. I know the feeling. You're like, it's there. I'll just finish it. It's so tempting.
Yeah, I'm terrible with that self-control. But then I came back and I had a nap. I played some board game arena, and then I got up and I did some. So I had a friend over for playtesting at 7 o'clock until about 11 o'clock, and we played their game, which was all about space football. I think their working title was Badek Ball. So it's very strongly inspired by American football, but they were willing to change all the rules of American football, if you know what I mean. They were trying to get the feeling of before each kind of time it restarts, because I don't know if you know, American football is very stoppy-starty. It doesn't have a flow like actual football, like what the Americans call soccer for our American friends.
Football.
So, like in football, it's like, yes, if it goes out of bounds, yeah, there's a kick in or throw in or like a penalty shot, or hey, you've scored a goal, now something happens at this point. But it's not the whole, oh, someone's tackled you, now you stop. It's like, yeah, someone's tackled you, now they should go on the offensive. Let's have a sorry, it's a bit weird to me. But that thing of someone tackles you and it stops, that's the heart of the game. And it's all about the strategy of what do you plan to do. So you've got your drafting of cards, and then you lay down your secret order. So it's a bit of action programming, if you know what I mean. And then you get specific players to do specific things. So you're thinking, okay, I need to get my person with the ball to over there. And we changed the rules. So every time someone gets tackled, like every time a defender is orthogonally adjacent to an attacker, the round ends and some points are scored. So if it's in one person's half, whichever person's half it's in, the other person scores points, if that makes sense. So if you manage to get forwards as the attacker, hey, you score points. The further forward you move it, hey, you score more points. But if you brought it back to be defensive before throwing it, and then the person rushes forwards and tackles you, they score points. And so there was a really nice thing there. We both scored once as defender, we both scored once as attacker, and Rob just managed to win 5 points to 4, and it felt really nice. And then we played 4 games of my deck construction game, where I've made a deck and Rob had made 2 decks, and we played with the first deck, which ended up being 1-1, and then with the second deck, Rob had during the third game, Rob had to concede because their initial draw was so bad. But then in the fourth game, they didn't quite win, and they decided that their deck just wasn't up to scratch because they'd been trying to make 2 decks out of 1 card pool. And that's not the way. So I gave them a second copy of the entire card pool, and they're going home to try and make their decks a little bit better. And Mike says, I call it Egg Ball American football. I like that name. I'm totally on board with that. But anyway, so yeah, that was a nice amount of playtesting, and my conclusions with the game are that it is generally working well. I have heard from a very analytical, experienced deck construction game player that it's inevitable that if I have too few cards, then it will just become very quickly solved and uninteresting. But I would like to keep going and see if I can, subvert those expectations, if you know what I mean, and make something really worth playing, and learn for myself at least why it doesn't work if it doesn't work. But that's going to be released at my leaving party, which will be basically like a big
which is in the middle of the summer.
Yeah, we'll have a tournament for it on the Friday night. So you'll get your deck when you arrive and a few other goodies in your goodie bag. And then, we'll have a tournament and we'll see, is there one really dominant deck? We might even have a second small tournament of champions on Saturdays, like a general Swiss tournament and then a knockout tournament maybe on Saturday. I don't know.
Cool.
But I really want to put the game through its paces. But there's some card strategies, some ideas of, we need more cards that have incentivized people to not just make lots of little creatures, but one big creature. So kinds of cards that open up, because it's not just about the inherent rules of the game. Now it's firmly at the point where it's like, okay, this card, which just gives you free circular resources, is that correct? Should it be 2? Should it be 4? Should it be 2 circles and one of something else? I don't know. I mean, one of something else would have the advantage that then it kind of encourages you to go with 2 resources in your deck rather than forcing you so hard down just the 1 resource route, which is quite an obvious strategy for lots of players. So maybe, I don't know. I genuinely don't. But like, there's all these cards, like with any deck construction game, the cards are at the heart of it, where it's the wide open possibilities. But yeah, we've been talking a lot about our recent highlights. We've got a lot to uncover, but you know what? Let's talk about wide open possibilities. Another thing with wide open possibilities is trick-taking games. And why are trick-taking games a brilliant thing? Brilliant thing. They're a little thing which is brilliant. Why are trick-taking games brilliant? Tell me.
Because there's so many possibilities there, I think. So it's a traditional mechanism which really appeals to me. I like the idea that it's something where you can play a lot of trick-taking games with a standard deck of cards, but there are so many different varieties. So as a mechanic, this is something I really like. Plus it's brilliant because it's quite simple to understand. Once you've got it, and it might take somebody, who's not really familiar with trick taking a few goes to say, oh, okay, right. So if this works or that works, okay, this is higher than that. I've got to follow suit. I can't use that. But once they've got it, then they've generally got it. Then you can introduce varieties like trumps or no trumps or, whatever you're doing in that particular version.
So what you're saying is that trick-taking games are brilliant because they've got this base that inherently works, but which is flexible enough to have lots of twists put on top of it.
Absolutely. Versatile. Yes, it's a very versatile base for a card game.
Like, I know someone, well, I say I know someone. I'm, as you may know, trying to play all the board game arena games. I've already got the Einstein Award for playing like the same number as what's the number of published games, but there's still a few that I've got left to play there. And one of the things that I'm playing is something called KQJ, which is a trick-taking game for 6 players exactly. Ooh. You can't play it with more or less. And there's someone on the website who says, my favorite game by far is this. And I know I specifically like games. To me, it's a little bit odd that you really like 6-player games when you're playing online. Because, I mean, you don't really get the social aspect. It's not as if they're playing with friends that you know, and it's like, yeah, this is a game that can cater me and 5 of my friends around the table. But, need to do a little
stretch.
But so we had a discussion in the game chat, and they're talking about why they love this game, and it's really interesting to hear. And yeah, what do you make? I don't know why I brought that up. Just it's interesting how you can have someone says, "Hey, I like trick-taking games, but for me, 2 against 2, it's too, what's going on, and it's too easy to compute exactly what's in people's hands. What with 3 versus 3, or even better, 2 versus 2 versus 2.
Ooh,
then you've got.
So it's a partnership game. It's not just a trick-taking game. It's a partnership game. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, this person specifically likes this game because they only like partnerships. They say they will not play a game if they're, and they've said that they get to play with so many people, all of whom are generally the people who are trying to play all the games on Board Game Arena. And they say that it's a very unpopular game, so they don't get to play it as much as they would like. But they are hoping that they can convince some people to stick around and play it more. And they have like all the best stats for this game. I'm not going to go into all the games played.
Excellent.
And but they kind of are enthusing about this and saying, please stick around and come and keep playing, and you'll love. But they talk about how maybe for you it's hard to understand because you clearly enjoy variety and diversity, but I'm very strict on what I enjoy, and this is what I enjoy. So for people who don't like variety, do you think that what, as a tangent, what do you think of the variety versus knowing what you enjoy and just getting into one game and being like, this is my thing?
So I do like variety, but I also do know what I enjoy, and I like to try new I think I personally like variety when it's similar to something that I've done before. So yes, it's fun to go off and do something which is completely different. And you go, wow, I've never played this type of game before. And for me, a lot of card battling things, that's not something I'm really familiar with. It's not something I play a lot of. The same for a lot of sort of traditional war game type things. That's not something I'm very familiar with. But but I love the variety that there are with traditional card games, because I know quite a lot of them, or if I don't know them, then I'm like, oh, okay.
And so there you've got like the comfort with the excitement.
Yeah, but I do know that so some of the traditional card games, and I'm thinking particularly of bridge and poker here, both of which have trick-taking elements. Both of those
Poker?
It depends what variant you're playing. You can play you can play poker, which is which is basically Texan Hold'em poker, where you're just going against what's on the table. You can play poker, which is essentially whist with betting. Poker is interesting. Generally, I don't play Texas Hold'em poker. I mean, to be honest,
for sure. I'm assuming that you're not talking about Texas Hold'em if you mentioned trick taking, but I mean, even in I've played maybe 5-6 versions of poker, but none of them I've seen have had trick taking in them. Can you explain how that would work?
Hang on. What do you mean by they haven't had trick taking in them? Because they've had just a simple, the top card wins. Now it's trick taking with a bet, but it's still.
So what? Let's define trick taking. Let's take a step back. My definition of trick taking is that everyone in player order will play a card, and then something will determine that someone takes all of those cards, and then you repeat. And I know there might be small twists to what I've said, but obviously, whether you want to win the tricks like in spades, or whether you want to avoid the tricks like in hearts, or whether you want to do both situationally like in Sparts, which mixes the two of them, or whether you want to win a number of tricks, but exactly the number that you bet at the start of the round, like in Wizard or Oh Heck, which is very interesting because in Wizard and Oh Heck, you have to say, I'm going to win this many in the entire round. And if you do win that many, then you get, I think, 20 points plus 10 points per trick that you win. But if you lose, if you go slightly over even or slightly under, then you lose 10 points per trick difference, if you know what I mean. And that's different to most bidding games where there can be a bidding at the start of it of how many tricks you will win. But typically in bridge, if you win more than you claimed, that's fine. That's even better.
Yeah.
Having to do it exactly is interesting. But obviously the things surrounding the tricks can be different. But for me, the tricks are everyone plays a card and then someone takes all of those cards. And typically it's there's the lead suit, whatever, and it's the highest card of the initially played suit. Sometimes there's trumps, but that's all conventions that can vary, but it's the playing of the things. And I would differentiate them from climbing games like Titshu and clubs. I would say that
you're right.
are climbing games because they can keep going until everyone has passed, which is different from an experiential point of view.
Yeah, and you're right, actually. You're right that when you're talking about something like poker, now, unless you're playing one of the variants where you're building a hand by trick taking, where so you've got so you've got some Russian variants where you're putting down. There's one called 1,000, and there's another one called I'm not quite sure what it's called because.
It's a really interesting idea. So,
but no, because
you start off with some cards in your hand, and then the cards that you win with the tricks are what turns into your poker hand. Is that the way it goes?
So, see, this is the thing. I've classed it as poker, I'm not sure it is a poker hand, actually. I'm not sure it is a variant of poker. I think it might be more a variant of whist. What you do is that you've got 6 cards rather than the full one. It's a 3-player game. It's called something like 1,000. And you've got six cards from each suit. It's a 3-player game, so that means that you've got 8 cards each.
Okay.
And you are betting on what you're going to end up with, but it's not the number of tricks which gets you points, it's what the hand is afterwards. So the points are allocated to, do you have a pair of kings? Do you have so jacks, I think, get you nothing, or is it 9s get you nothing? So it's basically the picture cards plus 9, 10, and ace, I think. And
so it's not so much about the combinations. Like, you're not making flushes and you know, sets of 4 and getting a bonus for having, you know, your relative values. It's just that you get points for certain things.
I think you are making flushes for the picture cards. You get negative points, I think, for the 9s, and then the 10s and the 8s. I think you just get the value of that.
I mean, that certainly sounds interesting, but it does sound fairly far removed from poker.
It does, doesn't it? Actually, now I'm thinking about it, but it's when so I think it's a betting element that I'm thinking about. Let's talk about so I would class a trick-taking game. I misspoke earlier about trying to pull in other things. But I would class the traditional trick as being what I think is just pure whist. So you've got a hand. Somebody leads, the other people need to match the card which is down there, they need to match the suit, they're trying to beat it, and usually there is a trump. Now I'd consider that
I'm going to just respond to what Mike has written below. I am not willing to accept poker. Let's remember that, firstly, poker is a family of games rather than a single rule set. But let's assume we're talking about Texas Hold'em for simplicity's sake, because that's the most popular thanks to casinos, because I think it's the easiest to teach and it's the easiest to get people to play in casinos. And so, for whatever reason, like, the casinos have popularized it, right? And it's been on TV and everything. And if you just say trick-taking is a form of auction, I mean, there is you can't just say everything's an auction game, and you can't just say everything's a trick-taking game. Things have more specific meanings, and as much as it's interesting to think about, this is kind of related to this, I think that things have meanings. And to me, a trick-taking game, it has to be everyone plays a card, and then, like, if we say it's everyone plays a card and then someone takes all the cards.
Hang on. Does it have to be a single card? Because you could then argue that if you're playing multiple cards, let's say that we're playing we're playing a variant of poker where we're going round and and you put down a pair of something and I put down a single card, does that still count as a trick, or could that in your book count as a trick-taking card where some people are putting down multiple cards and some people are putting down single cards, or does it have to be a single card for you?
I feel like if it's more than one card, that would be a revolution to me. I would say that I don't know any trick-taking games where you put down multiple cards. The only games I know where you put down multiple cards are ladder climbing games, where, as I say, you put down something and then it keeps going round. But having a trick-taking game where you put down 2 cards would be an interesting twist. I think that it would
Okay.
certainly be a big twist on trick-taking games, to the point where it wouldn't really be what I would call a pure trick-taking game.
In that case, I think that would be something that I'd be interested in doing. So I might
I
actually
would be
take that
interested in
idea
seeing
away
it,
of working
and
how that works.
I
Yeah.
would, if someone, Scouts isn't a trick-taking game.
I haven't played Scout.
Scouts
But
is a
I
ladder
feel as
climbing
though a
game, as I
lot of
say,
people have
because
talked about
people
Scouts and
pass,
trick-taking.
and in one single hand, you can play multiple times. In a trick-taking game, to me, it's very important that you just have one opportunity to play, and you have to play. If you can skip playing, or if you have more than one opportunity to play, to my mind, it's not a trick-taking game. It's a ladder
Okay.
climbing game. And I understand that to some people, the difference might be, well, it's all much of a muchness, but they are different things. I mean, ladder climbing games, it's maybe I pass at this point, maybe I keep my things. And good morning, Sate, and thank you for agreeing with
Yeah.
me.
I'm not sure that I. So I think I agree to the extent where, say we're talking about shades of color, or say we're talking about types of cake or whatever. There are things that are very, very not very close, but there are things where they are strongly related and they often get
Like
classed under
Vermilion and
one umbrella.
Carmine.
Well, I'm just thinking about, yeah, what is
Or
red? What is a shade? What is red and what is a shade of red? And does
so
somebody,
like FF1122 is clearly red. This is FF1122, but then if I go FF11CC, then well, that's clearly just pink. But if I go FF1166, is that red? Or I think this is a shade of red. I don't think this is really red anymore.
Okay. So let's not talk about ladder climbing games then, which I would class as being a different type of trick-taking game. I would class them as being as being a bluffing trick-taking game, or a game where you can, put down multiple cards or whatever.
So we've
but let's talk about single card trick-taking game. How about, there are some trick-taking games, and this is the thing the things I found really interesting. There are some where you can change the trumps halfway through. So typically, or with the games I've seen this, with the traditional games I've seen this done with, when you've got a king and a queen together of the same suit, the marriage of the king and the queen changes the trump. So you have to, so you play one in a trick.
Changing the suits, the trump suits, is something that you have agency over. It's something that happens because of the deal of the cards.
No, you have to actively play it.
They have to be in the middle of the table.
So let's say that you have the king and queen of hearts in your hand. You could choose just to use them as normal cards and not to change the trump. Or you could choose during your turn to say, well, I'm going to lead with, one of them, and then you show the other players the other. That changes the trump.
Okay. Interesting.
But of course, then you're giving up one of them. You're giving up one of them actually. To say, we'll make it into the trump, and you take the old trump. Then the other players know
what's
what
the name
you
of
have
this
in
game?
your hand. That I think is King.
And Kevin Newman on YouTube asks, "What's your favorite trick-taking game?" I mean, you mentioned Fox in the Forest, which is a modern trick-taking game. And
I like Fox in the Forest, yeah.
It's really interesting that trick-taking games continue to be made, and people continue to have new twists on them. Something that I really like about Fox in the Forest is, for sure that the odd numbers have these powers. It feels quite balanced. I'm going to mute you while you're typing. But with Fox in the Forest, the points you get is so beautiful, where if you are falling behind, you don't have to shoot the moon by having literally 0 tricks. You can shoot the moon by having like 0, 1, or I think 2. And then you still get big points. But then if you get something in the middle, like if you've got 3, then like, or 4, then, you know, you've just done badly. But then conversely, if you are being really good, then great. But then if you've got too many, then you've been greedy. So it's kind of these 4 levels of, you've managed to be humble, congratulations, or you've just done badly, or hey, you've done well, congratulations, or you've just been greedy. And so both players are either going to be at the extremes or in the middle because of the fact that it is a 2-player game. And that's really nice. Also, Xate has a shout out to the crew.
The crew! I love the crew, personally.
Hashtag, obviously. Hashtag invites me on Board Game Arena.
I am absolutely terrible at the crew. So I generally play. So I generally play with my husband. You know, we play the 2 of us, you know, with the dummy player, because you can play with Jarvis, the ship's robot, as a dummy hand. And we don't have particularly good telepathy, and it's mainly me not picking up on the sort of, you know. So Jess should only invite me in training mode. Well, maybe it's just our couple telepathy that's terrible. But he's played with some other friends of ours and done much better, and I've played with the same friends and completely bombed. So, but I love it.
Maybe you are the weakest link.
I am the weakest link. I think when it comes to telepathy, then, you know, I am definitely a weak link. I would be terrible at the mind, which obviously is not a trick-taking game at all, but, you know, but I'd be terrible at that sort
the crew is fascinating. I mean, I think there's something lovely about that mission-based structure, and while this is not a trick-taking game, I know that Kirsten, Lunda, and then myself were quite motivated by that when working on Questable. But I think that with the crew, there's something lovely about just, okay, I've got a bit of paper in the box with a tally of, okay, when I played with Chris and McCall, then this is how far we got, and then we'll pick it up. And last time we played, I think we played like 6 levels or 7 levels, and then eventually we called it tonight. And similarly with Chris McCall and Leila, we've got a different game going on, and then you just keep a tally. And I think there's something lovely about campaign games, and the fact that the crew takes that fundamental thing of trick-taking, but like has 2 massive twists. Firstly, making it cooperative. I mean, I don't know of any other cooperative trick-taking game. Sure, you get partnerships, but full cooperation is really weird. And it brings in all this analysis of what are you showing me? And then the other aspect is, you know, the fact that it's got variety. Each level brings in something.
The cooperative nature of it seems a little bit, I mean, so for me, quite often I like to talk a lot. I quite like a lot of table talk with these things. And so when you've got something which is cooperative and you have to not tell them things, then that's one of the real troubles there. And yes, of course I need to show them things, but it can be really difficult, you know, because I look at that and I'm like, okay, right. So they're showing me that that is the only card of that color. Okay, I can understand what that means. But if they're showing me that, you know, that's sometimes it's obvious, but sometimes it's really not. And I'm sitting there going, and, you know, they can't show
maybe
me
what you need
else.
is someone like Sate to explain after the fact what that was meaning. And Sate says it doesn't need telepathy. You have to induce things, not read someone's mind. Try asking, why is this person playing, communicating that, instead of, I think they are thinking ice cream, which is a bit harsh.
No, because I am terrible at that sort of thing. I mean, I'm actually really bad at that sort of.
But it's interesting because at a high level, trick-taking, competitive trick-taking is about how much, you know, remembering this information and being like, okay, well, they had to follow suit. And if you have to follow suit, then that gives you lots of information because, pardon me, in a competitive trick-taking game, if they play under you, then you might induce that, okay, if they're throwing a card away and they're trying to win tricks, then probably they're going to play their worst card. So that probably means that they've got the lowest.
One might induce that, but I wouldn't induce that. So let's take something completely outside of this, because I am terrible at this throughout areas of my life. Driving a car. I am now, apart from the fact that I'm not very practiced at driving because I don't own a car anymore, but we do hire cars. When I owned a car and I drove regularly, I think I am safe to say that I was better than average at the physical driving of the car. My spatial awareness is, much better than the average person. However, my ability to work out what other drivers were doing is whoop. And I spent years driving around, and I just don't know what other people are thinking. Supposing there are chances, just in conversations with people, if there's an opportunity to have a misunderstanding, then I will somehow take that opportunity.
Wow. I mean, for the record, Sate, if this is a genuine question, like, I have no idea why you didn't say a thing about green in this hypothetical situation. So, I mean, tell us, but yes, if you want to play Sate on Board Game Arena, then maybe you will learn.
Quite often, I know exactly what cards the other person has, but I have no idea what they're trying to do with them. I know what I'd do with them, but other people tend to do things which I wouldn't do. Supposing there's a chance for two people to make different decisions, I am frequently the person who makes the decision which is different to everybody else. So, who knows? But tricks, but nonetheless, The Crew is a very good game, and I do enjoy it. Despite the fact that I am actually not very good at it, I really enjoy it.
It's a very worthy Kennerspiel des Jahres winner. And Sate says, I can take the green trick. I am not worried about it. Even though you have the green 9, it's fine. But I can't tell you this because I don't have green. I will rocket it.
See, it's possible that in the context of a game, I may have got that. But I wouldn't have, unless I'm...
I mean,
yeah.
I wouldn't have induced that, I have to admit.
Yeah.
And talking about, like, learning a shared common language, Mike wants to give a shout out to Hanabi. I know that you said you wanted to finish, on time today, and it is 11 o'clock. But like, there's a couple of questions. Like, let's rapid fire. Why do you think people keep making trick-taking games? Why do people make? I mean, like, they keep coming out. Why is this?
Do they keep coming out? You see a few of them, but they tend to be variants on it. I mean, the trick-taking games that do come out, yes, I like them because it's a good, solid mechanism to fall back on. Whether it is a traditional, one card, or whether it's what the types that we talked about earlier with multiple cards, that you classed as ladder climbing. It's there's a good, solid mechanism you can fall back on.
Do you think that, like, we've explored the idea of, okay, playing 2 cards at once? I mean, that would be a radical change on trick-taking game. I'm not sure how that would quite work if it was, okay, everyone plays 2 cards. Do we need more twists on the trick-taking core concepts, or do we want more twists on what's going on around it, like the points and special abilities on the cards? I mean, I shout out to my friend Doric, who made a trick-taking game where it's a dungeon crawling trick-taking game. So it's a beautiful idea where there's 4 suits, and the 4 suits are the 4 directions. And then once someone's won a trick, then that person decides where the hero moves, like which of the cards. So the winner decides which of the cards played actually activates. You know what I mean? But then you move the hero around, and then you hopefully try to get the treasure, except for one person who's trying to get the hero killed.
I like that. So I would be very up for more trick taking, for more of the elements of trick taking to appear within other games. So rather than just oh, this is whist with some extra rules. I'd be up for some bigger games which had interesting things like that. That sounds really cool.
Like a trick-taking racing game. I have no idea what that would look like, but maybe like the winner gets to move forwards this many or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, the idea that you're controlling different directions or different pieces with that would be quite cool. In fact, yeah, the directions thing sounds fabulous, though I'm not sure I like the idea that the winner gets to choose where the person moves. Surely the suit of the card which won gets to choose where the person moves.
There's reasons that would give too much control to the person starting the trick. And
Yeah,
not enough power to the person who actually wins.
Yeah, but if the person who anyway, that might be a better cooperative go, for example. It could be a cooperative game. But yes,
I've asked you lots of questions, Jess, and what's a question you would like to ask me and potentially everyone watching? So as always, I invite everyone to comment, ask questions, and follow as you hear the question of the day. Question of the day. Here's a little question before we go on our way.
I think I'd like to ask about cards where the game is only the cards. Do you think that games are made better by having an additional thing that's not just cards? We were talking about your cards and cubes earlier. We've also just now, talking about using tricks to move something, to move a physical thing. So that's not a card. So, do you think that it adds something to have more than just the cards?
It says only cards. That's madness. What kind of person would do that? I mean, arguably, you know what? Yogi, which you can sort of see a little bit of there, like just in the frame that I've got, that isn't just cards, because whilst In a Bind was just the cards, when Gigamic took it over, I think that those card holders are an integral part of the game. They keep them together, and it's like, well, anything that's come out of there, it's out and you've pulled it. I don't know that not adding extra stuff in necessarily makes every game better. I think there's definitely a space for something simple. And I mean, yeah, actually, this is a terrible example because you've also got pieces. You've got to have physical resources. I use triangles, circles, and cubes that you have physically represented. But a game about quickly matching words to pictures, but never words to words or pictures to pictures, is one of my favorite of my own recent games. It's a quick, snappy thing, and I love the fact that I can keep it in my pocket. It's simple, it's portable, and I just bring it out and boom, there we go. I think that I can't see any place where non-cards could improve that. And I think this is a cop-out answer, but surely it depends on the game. I mean, I can't see Wibble, the game, I don't think could be improved by, having additional components. I don't see where they would come in. But Questable, on the other hand, like having a bit of pen and paper, like obviously if you've got more stuff with the L deck, then yes, absolutely can do more stuff. But I think that it ultimately depends on the game. Like the value of just cards is portability, price, being able to set up really quickly, not having to have a big box in your shelf.
There's something really, really straightforward about just having a deck of cards. Like you say, you can put them in your pocket, you can whip them out and be like, right, here's the game, and it's just cards. And particularly if it is a small box rather than something that's got extra space or extra bits, there is something inherently sleek and valuable about that. But there is something also quite nice about moving bits around, and I think there's definitely a tendency towards saying, oh well, if it's only a deck of cards, then it's worth less than if it's got some extra bits there. But personally, I think that perhaps over the next few months, that I'm going to be really looking at just cards and seeing if I can make various things. I've got ideas for mazes, for example. Make it just with cards and not have pieces that you also move around. What is Vamp on the Batwalk? Nice.
Vamp on the Batwalk is, by our definition, a trick-taking game. Everyone puts forward one card, and then one person takes all those cards. But it has some major twists. I will be doing a full review of this at some point in the near future. But I thought of it because of what we said about card components. To very quickly talk about the twists. Firstly, you don't see the fronts of your own cards, and you have to deduce what you might have in your hand. But each suit has a unique back.
Like the firework game.
Like Hanabi. But each suit has a unique back. So you know the suit of the card you're about to play, but not exactly what it is. And there's also some twists on how exactly you win tricks. I'm not going to get into that. The thing I am going to get into is the fact that rather than having to keep score on a bit of paper, the idea is you take the back of the box, and then you take this side of the box, and it's like a catwalk or a batwalk. And then you've got these little markers, and then they move forward until you reach 10 points. Can you sort of see that that's a point?
As it falls off the top. No,
if you put it like at an angle whilst trying to show it to the camera, then yes, it falls off. During
that.
It would not. But because I was thinking in my mind, normally what we've been talking about is adding complexity, like the racing game, like the dungeon crawling game, and I think there's something valuable to that. But those games are not necessarily going to be something that my parents really get into, because it does add that level of complexity, which might be just that touch too much. Whereas here, what you're doing here is adding extra components, which are they could be argued to be superfluous. Like in theory, you could have just had cards, and once you've got 10 cards, but having a score marker does make it nice, especially when the goal of the game isn't to have the most at a certain point, but like a lot of traditional trick-taking games where you go up to 50 points or 100 points, whatever this is, you play until someone reaches 10 points. And the nice thing there is, even if you're at 0 points and someone else is at 9, hypothetically, you could win 10 points in a row. Who knows? You might, probably not, but especially if you've just lost so badly up until that point. But you know what I mean? Anyway, that was something that I wanted to bring up. But thank to other people out there, what do you think? Do you think that there's something valuable in, if you have a game that's just cards, do you think of that as less inherently valuable than a game that has like some scoring tokens or some card, like thick, chunky cardboard or something else going on in the box? I would really be interested to hear what you think. And before we skedaddle over to what's up to, you can share boxing if you want to. I was thinking last night, like, what do I need to do? And then it seems like such a luxury today. I'm not doing anything except for doing some drawing. And like when I say that, it's like, it feels like, I mean, it is work in that I am being productive and it's for the output that I'm focusing on. But it's like, you know what? That categorical stuff, that was really stressful because it had been so overdue, if you know what I mean. Whereas these two new games, I don't owe them to anyone. No one's paid for them. It's brilliant. So no matter what I make, I'm not letting anyone else down. And I just make a thing, and no matter what I make, no one can complain. Because if you don't like it, don't buy it. And that's the beauty of, I know that's the way most people do things. But like kind of having the game, and I think that's the way I'm going to do all my stuff in the future. No more Kickstarters where I've not fully finished the artwork, because I've decided it's just too stressful and it takes all the joy out of it. Because now, even though I didn't do it yesterday because I was tired and didn't have enough sleep, I'm genuinely excited to get back to it today, I'm just going to draw about 50-ish things for a game about words that rhyme and terrible rules online. And I'm drawing one fish to like a bunch of things for a game about auctioning cubes and after winning an auction to become the auctioneer. What are you up to? What is everyone else up to? Jess, what's your thing?
I am getting in a car once we've finished this, and I am driving 14 boxes of games down to the fulfillment offices, head offices, in order, well, their warehouse actually, in order to have those shipped out to the European Union for the Kickstarter backers for Library Labyrinth. So there you go.
Lovely. And Kevin says there's something to be said for the purity of just cards. Although I do enjoy cards and bit combos. As you said, Bez, it's all in the recipe. Oh, thank you very much.
I like this. I like the fact that there are, just cards, but yeah, it is all in the recipe. I agree with that.
So at this point, I'm going to recap and wrap up before we finish up. And we talked about getting to the final stages of stuff. We briefly mentioned aftercare, but you know what? Can that be the topic of in 2 weeks' time? Talking about fulfillment, like just in our catch up, but also aftercare, like what that means. And let's talk about that a bit. We talked about washing out gravel. We talked about taking like 12 is a good number to take to the post office at a time, apparently, and setting yourself a target and saying, that's as many Library Labyrinth as I'm set myself the target to do today. I've done my task, and now I'm enjoying the rest of the day and doing other things, chunking it up into chunks. We talked about whether to have cubes or pennies, potentially, in a game about auctioning cubes after winning an auction to become the auctioneer. I'm going to do a Twitter poll on that. We talked about definitely having the word terrible, how it's got this playful aspect. We talked about my deck construction game. We talked about KQJ, the beauty of partnerships, like the fact that, you've got this symbiosis and you've got your compatriots almost. We talked about some cooperative games, mainly just the crew, to be honest, but also about being able to read other people. We talked about the beauty of variety because there's so much variety. I mean, trick taking is a fairly flexible thing. I mean, people put down cards and then someone takes all of them. That's a very flexible thing. It is an auction of some sort, but I think inherent to trick taking, if there's only one suit, I would say it's not a trick taking game. I would say then it becomes just a once around auction. I think there needs to be at least 2 suits for it to be a trick-taking game.
Probably. I suspect that 2 suits wouldn't actually work very well. I would think it would probably be 3. Fox in the Forest has 3 suits rather than 4.
I've never seen a trick-taking game with 2 suits. I'd be interested to explore it as a designer to see. But I'm just saying that I think there has to be definitely more than 1 suit, because 1 suit is definitely no. 3 suits, yeah, that's definitely correct. 2 suits, we don't know because it doesn't exist yet.
See. Experiment.
We talked about ladder climbing. We talked about how that's different, how poker is not a trick-taking game, no matter what anyone who associates with sheep might say. We talked about... and what else did we talk about? I feel like I'm... Oh, yeah, we talked about our favourites, which you mentioned. It's called King, where you can actually
So
change
I think
the
I actually
marriage.
got those round the wrong way. It's 1,000 where you can change the marriage, where the marriage of the king and queen changes the thing, and it's King actually, where you're scoring basically based on things like flushes and things.
And nines are negative. Yeah. So it's
and
a Russian game called 1000.
Yes, but in Russian, obviously.
Okay, do you know what that word is? Can you try to pronounce?
No, no. It's our Ukrainian neighbours tried to say how they said it, and I was like, right, my ability to remember that is gone, I'm afraid.
And then we talked about the joy of doing art and getting stuff to the post office. So if this has been an entertaining, interesting, whatever thing, then please spread the word. I want to say thank you very much, everyone. Obviously, I am Bez, stuff by Bez in all of the places, Twitter, Instagram, Board Game Arena. I mean, technically I'm on TikTok, although I've never posted anything there, so don't go looking for stuff. But yeah, feel free to follow me wherever or join my Discord, stuffabez.com/Discord. If you want to check out my future streams, tomorrow I'm having Ben Downton talk about marketing. Friday will be a quick show rant on my way to playtesting. Saturday, I will be playing a game live with Josie while we chat about this and that. Sunday, I'll be streaming live from Norwich. And Monday with Phil Walker Harding. Tuesday, Dicini Debrief. And next Wednesday, Alan Paul and I will be talking about automatic resource or about resource growth. The final mechanic that starts with A. So we will finally have finished all our A's. And then in, I believe, 3 weeks and 1 day, I will have my special 1000th episode, after which I will stop streaming daily. I mean, I'm thinking it might be a fortnightly thing. I'll talk to Jess about that maybe for a couple of minutes after this show, if that's okay with you, Jess. But where would you like to be found, Jess?
You can normally find me on Twitter. It's not quite imploded yet, where I am Descent Games. But you can also go to descentgames.com. You can also go to librarylabyrinth.com, and we're still accepting pre-orders via GameFound. So you can join the back of the order queue if you like, despite the fact it's already here. So it's not really a pre-order anymore; it's an actual order.
Except that it'll take time because you're only doing 20 a day.
Exactly, it'll take time, but it'll still get to you before Games Expo, I believe. Or you can come and find me at Games Expo. I am going to be there. So anybody who is here in the UK who wants to come to Games Expo, come and find me. Once you've found Bez, of course.
Can I find you on Thursday before it's even opens when I'm not working?
Exactly. I will be there.
Can I punch your shoulder in a playful manner?
You can. You can also, you can do the elbow
dance. Amazing
thing. Yeah,
I'll look forward to it. I think we've rambled long enough, and there's nothing left more to say other than, as always, bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye, 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye, bye, everyone.
Bye.